after forever of me saying that I was never going to make these, you guys won. Even on a video where I said, I am not making the clowns. Within 2 hours of me posting it, I got 3 comments asking me to make these damn clowns. You win, okay? Hi everybody, and welcome back to another tutorial. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to make these candy clowns. I also made them shaker clowns. I've been really delaying making this video. I have raging chlorophobia, which is the fear of clowns. Just even getting started on these made me very anxious. However, we're better now that I've made it. I thought this might be a good exercise because it kind of like put me in control of it, if that makes sense. This video is going to be very long, but I am going to show you each and every step. This is what I like to call one of my work along with me's. So this is going to be a video where the idea is as if we were in the same room making these together at the same time. Buckle in. Another thing to keep in mind, I don't know your string measurements and I don't know your beads. I didn't count. I'm so sorry. I really don't want to because it's going to be a lot. But you're going to need a lot of beads for this. This is a full 3D. The inside is hollow, but it's going to be a lot. You're also going to need a lot of string. I recommend a 1mm stretch cord. I don't recommend plastic, elastic. I've never tried, nor do I want to. It doesn't seem like it's going to work very well. For this tutorial, outside of the string and the pony beads, obviously, I use 2 chapsticks. You don't have to do this. I just find it helps shape some of the pieces. And scissors and tweezers. If you do not have a candy needle, you're gonna need tweezers. Trust me, you'll want them. And I'm also gonna use a lighter to burn the tips of my strings. It's super fluffy. And then I take this and it kind of burns it down into a point for me, and it also keeps it from fraying. Enough of that intro. Let's go ahead and get started. We're gonna be building going down all the way up. The first thing we're going to start on are his feet. Now, what we are going to do is we're going to build these feet kind of backwards. So do you see how I have these white here? This is going to be the last part that we add on. We're going to start from building here, going down. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take some stretch string. I'm using this bright, obnoxious green just because it's easier for you guys to follow along at home. And I'm going to go ahead and hit the ends of this. Now, the first thing that we are going to start off with is a peyote stitch. We're going to be doing a peyote stitch of 12 beads. They can be of any color, but remember, we're starting from here and working our way down. So I'm going to go ahead and add on my 12 beads. For me, I'm going to start with green. And normally at this point of the video, I cut, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to show you guys me adding the 12 beads. And now I have my 12 beads. I'm just going to double check. Now, when I tie this, I'm going to need some of this string to kind of help attach this on. So I'm gonna tie this, but I'm gonna leave just a little bit. So we're not gonna cut off this tiny tail. Now when I tie, I'm gonna tie this pretty tight. We really don't need any stretch for this. The stretch is nice for when we need to make edits, so we don't wanna pull it too hard to where our string can snap, or where the pressure is so much that it actually can make our beads snap. So I actually have a missing bead in here. I don't know if you can see that. My string was so tight that it snapped the bead. So there's kind of finding a really good middle ground with that. There's no way that I can physically tell you how much you need. You're just gonna have to go based off experience. So I gave this a handful of ties, and we're gonna start building up. We're gonna want some rows of, we're gonna need a row of 4 and a row of 3. So if you've never done a peyote stitch before, Well, I hope this isn't your first time doing a peyote stitch. All right, and I'm gonna go ahead and start building. I'm gonna add one bead onto my string. I'm gonna skip the middle bead and I'm gonna go over to a bead next to it, and I'm gonna pull, and I'm gonna make sure that I'm pulling pretty tight. And I'm gonna place another bead onto my string, skipping the middle bead and going over to the bead on the side here. And I'm pulling it tight. And I'm going to continue doing this all the way around, so skipping that middle bead, going to the bead here, placing a bead on my string, skipping the middle bead, going over to the bead here, placing a bead on, skipping the middle bead, jumping over to the bead here, and last but not least, placing a bead on the string and skipping the middle bead. We're also going to be weaving it into the bead here. We're going to go up through the first bead that we added. So as you can see, I'm kind of going through this kind of quickly. This is under the assumption that you already know how to do a peyote stitch, because if you're here making one of these 3D clowns, you really need to know this. So I'm going to start pulling this pretty tight, and it's going to start pulling our beads up like this, and this is where the lip balms come into place. So I'm just going to place this around. Again, you do not have to do this. I just like doing this just because it helps me keep it into shape, and sometimes these beads will twist in on themselves as you're building up, like I'm pretty sure it just did here. And I'm going to go ahead and work on my next row. So I'm going to be placing a bead on my string, weaving it through the bead that's sticking up next to it and pulling. And I'm going to continue this pattern going all the way around. We're going to go ahead and step up our row here, just weaving into the other bead just like as we were before, going up through the bead that's right next to it. We have 2 columns on each side. We're going to go ahead and do another row. So placing on a bead and then weaving it through the beads that are sticking up. Lord, I'm just thinking about how long this video is going to take me to edit. Okay, coming up on the last bead of this row, I'm going to be weaving up through this green bead here and then all the way up through this other green bead right over here that's sticking up. And we're going to go ahead and go around again. So placing on my green bead, weaving it through that bead that's sticking up next to it and pulling. Coming up on my last bead of this row, placing on a green bead, weaving it through this bead here, and up diagonally through the green bead sticking up. I have to add one more row and then we will be good to go. So I'm going to go around one more time, placing on that green bead, skipping this middle bead here, and weaving over to the bead that's sticking up. Continuing going all the way around. Coming up here on the last bead of the row, adding on my green bead, weaving it up through here just like before, and then up through that green bead that's sticking up. Beautiful. All right, so we should have 1, 2, 3, 4 row and a 1, 2, 3 row. Now we're gonna go ahead and add on the feet. So if you want this to all be one color, then you're gonna continue doing this with green. However, I want the little feet to be white. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab one of my whites. I'm going to place it onto my string, and I'm going to weave it into the bead that's sticking up here. Now I'm going to take my string and I'm going to weave down into this green that's right next to it, and then up through this point here with no bead attached to my string. And now I'm going to add one white bead onto my string, and I'm going to weave it through the bead that's sticking up here. I am going to weave down to this green bead, and I'm going to weave up through this green bead sticking up here. And pull. And I'm going to add my last white bead for this row. So I'm going to add on my white bead, and I'm going to weave it through that green that's sticking up right there, and I'm going to pull. So now we should have like a little bit of a point here. So it should be every other middle bead, we have a bead. Now I need to take my string and I need to get it through this white point right here. So that means I need to weave down to the green, up through this green, and up through this white right here. We need to take a white bead, place it onto our string, and we're going to weave it in to the white bead right next to this one. We're going to add one more white bead and weave it through the white bead sticking up here. And our final white bead on this leg, I'm going to go ahead and add it on, and I'm going to weave it into that very first white bead over here. And I'm going to take my string and I'm going to pull, and that pulls it all together like that. So it should be like a little triangle. And now I'm going to go ahead and tie this off. So if we take our string, we're going to need to go underneath these beads, and there's kind of like a bit of a loop of string right here. We need to take our string, go underneath this white bead here. I'm taking my finger on the other side to kind of lift my string up like that. And do you see this big loop that we've just created? I'm going to take my string through that big loop and I'm going to pull. And that is how we're going to tie off this first leg here. So I'm going to continue to do this. I'm going to do this about 3 or 4 times just to make sure that it stays secured. If for whatever reason you have decided to use plastic elastic string, tie this like 10 times. I'm not kidding, because it will not stay. Beautiful. Now I'm going to go ahead and cut off the first string here. And we have leg number 1. Now I'm going to take this leg and I'm just going to leave it over here. And we are going to start on leg number 2. So for me, I'm going to switch over to blue. And we're going to do the exact same thing that we did for this leg. So I'm going to go ahead and add on my 12 beads. $11 and $12. Now for this one, I'm not going to need this long piece of string that I left here. I'm just going to tie it as normal. So I'm going to go ahead and just give this a tie. We're going to do the exact same thing that we did before. Remember, when we're tying it, we're not going so hard that the string snaps or that it creates so much pressure that it will snap our beads. Just enough. And again, there's no way that I can physically tell you what just enough is. It just takes practice. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead, take my lip balm, place this on, and we are gonna do this all over again. So placing on a bead onto my string, skipping a middle bead and jumping over to the bead next to it. And pulling. Placing a bead on the string, skipping the middle bead next to it, stringing it through and pulling. Placing a bead on the string, skipping the middle bead, jumping over to the bead next to it and pull. And continuing this all the way through. I'm on my last bead here for this row. I'm gonna go ahead and weave through this bead here and then up through that very first bead that we had added on. Okay, and now we're gonna go ahead and continue going around the same amount, wanting one column of 3, one column of 4. So placing our bead on the string and going over to that bead that's sticking up right next to it and making sure that we're pulling. I'm on my last bead for this row. I'm gonna weave it through that same bead that I normally would, and then we're gonna go up diagonally through this bead here that's sticking up right next to it. And starting our next row. All right, on the last bead of my row, doing the same thing as before, weaving it into the bead over here and weaving it up through the bead that's sticking up. Going in for another row. On the last bead of this row, you're gonna do the same thing, going into this bead here and then up through the bead that's right on top. Alrighty, my friends, I'm gonna go around my last time on this row. Okay, I'm on my last bead for this row. I'm gonna go ahead and weave up through that side bead and then going up through that bead that's right on top, just like before. And now we're gonna go ahead and add on our 6 white beads. If you are not doing the white beads, then you will stick with whatever color that you'd like. I'm gonna go ahead and place on my bead onto my string, and I'm gonna weave it through the bead that's sticking up, that's sticking up right next to it. I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna take my string, I'm gonna weave down to this bead and then up through this bead that's sticking up. And adding on a white bead onto the string and weaving it through the blue bead that's sticking up. I'm gonna take my string, I'm gonna weave it down into this bead here and up through the bead that's sticking up. And I'm going to go ahead and add my last white bead onto this row, placing the bead on my string and weaving it through the bead that's sticking up here. And now we have our 3 points. I'm gonna go ahead and take my string, I'm gonna weave down into this blue here, up through this blue, and up through that white point. I'm gonna go ahead and add on a white bead onto my string, and I'm going to weave it through the white bead that's sticking up right here. I'm gonna take my white bead, place it on my string, and weave it through the bead that's sticking up here. And finishing up here, gonna add on one white bead onto my string and weaving it through the white bead that's sticking up here. And just like before, we are going to pull, and it's gonna pull his foot all together. And we're gonna tie it off the same way, taking our string, looping it underneath that white, taking the finger and pushing it through and pulling that string through that loop in between those two beads and pulling. And continuing this about 3 to 4 times. Remember, if you were using plastic elastic, you're gonna tie this off more than I am. I'm gonna give this one more tie. And I'm gonna cut off this extra string here. And now he has his legs. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this string and I want to weave it into one of these bottoms here. So you see how there's a top here and a bottom, tee-hee. And I'm gonna take my string, I'm gonna weave it through, and I just wanna make sure that it's sticking out right there. Now I'm gonna take this leg, it doesn't matter. I'm gonna try my best to make sure that I have maybe like the part with the string sticking out, facing inwards. I'm gonna take the string and I'm gonna weave it through a bottom piece here. So I'm gonna take it, now my string is sticking out this way, so I'm gonna make sure that when I weave my string through, I'm weaving it in this direction. So you see how it's kind of looped around like that? And then I'm gonna take this string, I'm gonna go back through that green, and we're just gonna go ahead and give this a few ties. So this is going to make a loop, and I'm gonna pull. And then I'm just gonna keep taking my string through that loop we made, and I'm just gonna tie it a few times. Now remember, we want to make sure it doesn't matter what side of the legs, we just need to make sure that they are 2 bottom pieces of the row, not the top piece. So you should be looking something like this. Take those tweezers and push that in there. So now his legs are connected. Keep those in there just to kind of help. Trust me, you'll want these later. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and take these little leggies and I'm gonna set them aside, and I am actually going to work on the arms. So I'm gonna take a piece of stretch string and I'm going to grab 8 beads of any color, and I'm gonna go ahead and add them to the string. Now I'm gonna cut off a pretty big piece, just because like what we did with the legs, we're gonna leave a piece of string so that way we can weave it through the body. So I'm gonna tie it kind of like in the middle here, just because I'm gonna use this string to help weave it through here. And I'm gonna pull. I'm gonna pull this pretty tight, same way that we did the legs. And I'm going to go ahead and let one side of this string sit, and I'm gonna grab the other side, and we are gonna go ahead and start building up the arms. It's gonna be the same way that we did the legs, so skipping the middle bead, weaving over to the bead next to it, and pulling. For this, however, I don't have lip balm containers that will fit around this, so I don't really have anything that'll fit around this because it's so small. So just making sure that I'm taking my fingers as I'm going, and I'm just kind of pulling it and shaping it as I go. And for this, we're just gonna be doing rows of 3. So before we did a row of 3 and a row of 4, for these we're going to be doing rows of 3. And I'm going to go ahead, start up my next row. The arms are my least favorite part. Not building them, but attaching them. I really do not enjoy doing that. Okay, I'm going to go up through that blue and up through this blue right here. Again, it is the exact same way as we did the legs. And I'm on my last one for this row here. I'm gonna go ahead, take my string, and I'm gonna weave it through this blue bead here, up through here. And if you are doing little arms like I am, this is where you are going to switch to white. So we're gonna build one more row. And it's just like the leggies, we're just kind of building these bit upside down. And coming up on our last white here, gonna go ahead and add this on, weave it through that blue bead and up through that white, just like before. And for this, we don't have to do anything special because it is so small. I'm just gonna take my string and I'm just gonna weave it through all these white ones, including this one here. Even though the string's already going through it, we're just gonna go back through it and we're gonna pull. And that will close off your clown's little arm. And I'm gonna go ahead and tie it off the same way we did the first leg. Now, these are very tight, so this is where those tweezers might come into handy. And the worst part about editing these is editing out all of my attempts. Because y'all, I take a lot of attempts to get a lot of things to go, as you can see. Ugh. There we go. No, this is the part that Kandi tutorial people don't ever show you, the mistakes, including me, except for right now. Okay, so I've gotten this 4 times now. I'm gonna go ahead and trim off this tail, leaving this long one here. Okay, so this is how your first little arm should look, and I am going to take him and stick it off to the side, and we're gonna take another longer piece of string and we're gonna do the exact same thing again. So I'm gonna go ahead and add on my 8 green beads this time because we're doing like the alternating pattern. And again, I'm gonna kind of do this towards the middle so I have a longer piece for when I have to attach. And I'm gonna pull, same thing for the legs and the other arm that we just did. Ugh. Okay, I'm gonna leave my shorter string off. I'm gonna grab this longer one here and I'm gonna go ahead and start building. Starting off with my first row. All right, coming up to my last bead on this row, weaving it through that green, up through that first green that we added, and pulling. Gonna go ahead and go all the way around again. So adding on my green beads and pulling. Remember, we want rows of 3 columns on both sides. Coming up to my last bead on the row, placing the bead on the string, weaving it up this green here and up through this green here. Adding on my last row of green beads. Coming up here to the last row, adding my green bead through this green bead, up through that green bead. And if you are doing the white, you're going to be adding the 4 white beads on now. And weaving it through that green, up through that white, and then we're going to take our string and we're going to string it all the way around all 4 of the whites. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and pulling tight. And once again, tying it off just like how we were before. Giving this 3 ties, 3 or 4 ties. Okay, so with all that, cutting that off, taking my string, trying to sneak it into that bead. And now we have the second arm. And we're gonna take both of these arms and we are just going to set them off to the side. Okay, so next we are going to go ahead and make the body piece. So that's gonna be this piece here. So for this, I like to make like alternating colors for the buttons. And I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna get some new string. I'm gonna need a lot of it for this part. And I am going to go ahead and tie on a new piece of string. So I have my 2 pieces here that we attached. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna go back 3 beads. So 1, 2, and 3. So I'm going to take my string, weave it underneath those blues, and I'm just gonna go ahead and tie on a new piece of string. I'm gonna cut off this tiny tail, and I'm gonna weave this string through this blue bead here. Now I'm gonna go ahead and I'm going to, because I'm doing like the alternating pattern, I'm gonna take a green bead and place it on my string, and I'm going to weave it into the blue. So we're gonna be weaving in this direction. This is important. So I'm gonna go ahead and weave this through. And now I'm gonna go ahead and take whatever color you want for the button. I'm gonna place it on the string, and I am going to weave it in to the green bead that's sticking up right here. Let me go ahead and change the camera angle a bit. Okay, hopefully this is a bit better to see. And I'm gonna take my string and I'm gonna weave it through this green bead here with my pink bead on. So it's gonna kind of sit in the middle here. This is gonna be the piece that's gonna kind of connect it. And then I'm gonna go ahead and add on my blue bead, place it on my string, and I'm gonna weave it into the green that's sticking up right here. And I am going to peyote stitch going all the way around, alternating between my blues and my greens. So because I'm still on the green side, I'm gonna go ahead and add on my blue and weave it through that green that's sticking up and pull, and place on my blue, weave it through that green that's sticking up, and pull. Placing on my blue, kind of coming back towards the back here, weaving it through this green and pull. Adding on a blue, placing it on my string, weaving it through this green, pull. And now I'm gonna go back to one of my button stripe colors. So I'm gonna go ahead and add on this hot pink, and I'm going to weave it into the blue sticking up right here. So you see this blue, we're gonna take the string, we're gonna weave it through and pull. And I'm gonna go ahead and do my green. place it on my string, and weave it through the blue that's sticking up. Placing on my green and weaving it through this blue that's sticking up. Taking my green, weaving it through the blue that is sticking up. Taking my green and weaving it through the blue that is sticking up. And I'm going to take my string and I'm going to weave up through this green that we've added. Okay. So once we're sticking out of here, I'm going to go ahead and take my green bead. I'm going to place it on my string and I am going to weave it into the pink. So it might be a little bit difficult because it's really down in there. I'm going to pull. And now I'm going to go ahead and switch back to my blue, place on my blue bead, and I'm going to weave it through the blue that's sticking up, and I'm going to pull. You can see it kind of pulls that pink bead up a bit for you. And I'm going to continue going around my guy with the blue, just doing a regular peyote stitch. And I apologize if the lip balms are kind of hard to see through. I have a hard time doing it without them, just because this really does help keep the shape. Take a blue bead and we're going to weave it through that pink again. So whatever button color you have, I'm going to kind of turn this upside down a bit just because it's going to kind of help me, because you really have to kind of pull that bead up to get it. Just because it is, like if you're pulling tight enough, like as you should be, the bead is going to be really down in there. And I'm going to go ahead and go around with my greens. All right, I'm going to go ahead and place on my green bead. I'm going to do just like what we were doing before. I'm going to go ahead and weave through this green, and I'm going to weave up through the green here. So again, this might be a little bit difficult just because I know that this area is going to be very tight. There's a lot of string already going through this green bead here. And up through the green, and pull. And we're going to go ahead and if this is the part where if you want alternating colors, kind of like this, this is where you're going to do that. I'm just going to stick with the hot pink, and I'm going to go ahead and weave it through the blue here. And I'm going to go ahead and continue going around this all the way with my blue beads. So for my own personal sanity, I'm going to kind of pick this up a little bit more and twist it around. Should be good on the lip balms now that I have the pattern started. And I'm going to go to my hot pink here, place it on, and I'm going to weave through that green and pull. And going over to my greens. Alrighty, on my last bead for the row, and just like before, I'm going to weave up through this green and through this hot pink. Alrighty, Okay, and going to the blue and going all the way around again. Who knows, maybe for this part I'll put some more like fun music that isn't my normal lo-fi track, just because I'm being pretty quiet right now, so maybe that might be fun to have some different music in the background. Now, as you go through, you'll notice that your pink beads, or whatever you're using for the middle pieces, should start lifting up along with the rest of your pattern. So it should just be a part of your peyote stitch at this point. It shouldn't be crazy sunken in like it was at the very beginning. All right, coming up here on my last bead, I'm gonna go ahead and take my string, I'm gonna weave it through the pink bead, and I'm gonna go up through the blue bead. I promise we're almost there, we just have a few more layers to go. So I'm gonna go back all the way around using my blue beads here. If you're using alternating colors for your buttons, this is where you're gonna go back to the original color that you started with. If you wanted to do alternating, again, I'm just sticking with the hot pink. Okay, once again, I'm coming up on my button piece. So if you're using alternating colors, again, this is where you're gonna go ahead and go with the original color that you started with at the bottom of your clown. I'm gonna go ahead and take my string. I'm gonna weave up through this bead here and up through this blue bead here. We've been doing before in the past. Okay, we're gonna go back to our blues and go ahead and finish up with this row here. Okay, coming up on this last bead for the row here, I'm gonna go ahead and add on my blue. Gonna weave it up through this blue here and up through this blue here. We're going around again. We are almost done. We just have about 2 more rows to go. I know that this can be very time consuming, but it's kind of nice. It's like it's very mind numbing. I'm gonna go ahead and add on my hot pink for my last button. This will be the last one we add. one more button on, weaving it through that blue, adding on a blue bead. We're going to be weaving up through these 2 beads here. And this will be our last row, I promise. And then we got to do the head and then attach everything and add the collar, and we're almost there. Okay, guys, we are coming up on the last bead of this damn clown's body. So I'm gonna go ahead and place on my blue bead, and just like before, I'm gonna jump up these 2 beads here. Do your fingers hurt yet? Because mine do. All right, he's got pants. Yay. All right, so from here, we're gonna go ahead, we're gonna attach his arms, and then we're gonna make his head, his hat, and then the collar. So I'm gonna go ahead and tie this off. So I'm gonna go ahead and do as we were doing before. And I am not going to cut this string off because we're gonna use it later to help attach on our clown's head. All right, we are going to leave the string off to the side. Now, we're gonna go ahead and add on his arms. As you can see, mine are kind of uneven here because I'm not the greatest at it, but I'm gonna try. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna start with the blue one, and we are going to, first of all, determine if you want a front or a back. This is the time to do that. I actually think I'm gonna start with the green, and I'm gonna start here. So there is no right way or wrong way to attach your arms. You can attach them however you'd like. For me, I'm gonna go ahead and there's a bottom piece to our row and there's a top piece. I'm going to kind of find the middle, 1, 2, 3 up beads and then 1, 2, 3 down beads for the middle. And I'm gonna take my arms and I'm gonna kind of align it like this. So my 2 down beads should be touching like that. And I'm gonna go ahead, I'm going to take my string, I'm gonna make sure that it is where a down bead is. And I'm going to take my string and I'm going to weave it into that 3rd down bead. So I wanna make sure that my string is sticking out of currently a down bead. Doesn't matter which side, unless you're being picky about it. And I'm gonna pull. And that will link together our down beads, just like that. And now I'm gonna kind of weave it up and down. This part I'm not great at. There's nothing I can do about it. I've tried it a million different ways. I can't figure it out. If you can, leave it in the comments below. I'm gonna go ahead and take my string and I'm going to weave into this up bead here. That's gonna kind of lock it into place, just like that. Now, I'm actually gonna take my string and I'm going to, you see right here diagonal from that first down bead, so this guy right here, I'm gonna take my string and I'm gonna weave it through that. So I'm gonna kind of pinch this a bit to kind of get that up. I'm gonna pull. Perfect. And then I'm gonna take my string and I'm gonna go right below. And pull. And now I'm gonna go over to my up bead here. I'm gonna take my string and I'm gonna go through this up bead right here. And I'm gonna pull. Okay, so now I'm gonna take my string and I'm going to weave it down into this blue bead here. So you see how it's kind of the middle blue bead right here? Weave that through. I'm going to pull. And then I'm going to take my string. I'm going to go up through this up bead here. So you see how we have the string going through this up bead? We're going to go to this one right here. And I'm going to weave through. And now I'm going to take my string and I'm going to weave it in to this bead here. So the bead that's directly underneath of it, or diagonal from this bead. So boom, boom. And I'm going to pull. And I'm going to go right above it, right through here. And I'm going to pull. And now I'm going to take my string and I'm going to go through that last up bead right here. So we went through this one, and now we're going to go through this one. And now your little guy's arm is on and good to go. So I'm going to go ahead and there's like a little loop of string right here. I'm just going to take my string and I'm going to go through that loop and I'm going to tie it. And like I said, this is not incredible the way that I put this on, but it's the best way that I've been able to figure it out. And I'm not incredible at doing this, so I apologize if that was really hard to follow. I had no other way of explaining it. To be honest, the tutorial that I watched, they didn't even explain how to attach it. They were just like, yeah, you got it. So I had to kind of come up with my own technique on this. All right, and I'm going to take my string, and I'm going to go through this bead here. Try to maybe hide that knot because it looks ugly. There we go. And I'm going to go ahead and cut off this tiny little tail here. And now he's got his first arm. And we're going to go over to this arm here, and we're going to do the exact same thing again. So I'm going to take my string and make sure that it's going through a down bead. Perfect. So my string is now sticking out of a down bead, and we're meeting up with a down bead here, right down the middle. So you should find the middle right through here. So 1, 2, 3 up beads, 1, 2, 3 down beads. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to meet them up just like that, just like before. I'm going to take my string and I'm going to take it through that down bead just like that. And now I'm going to take my string and I'm going to take it and I'm going to go through that corner up bead that's right next to it, just like that. And I'm going to take my string and I'm going to go through this bead right here. So when we touch like this, it should be right here. Or diagonal from this piece here. And I'm going to pull. And then I'm going to go right underneath from this green bead, so just like that. And I'm going to pull. And now I'm going to meet up with that up bead. So the bead that is across from here. Take my string, I'm going to go through like that, and I'm going to pull. I'm going to take my string, and I'm going to go down through this green one right here. So that should be the one that's right above that blue. Right down the middle, just like that. And now I'm going to take my string, I'm going to go back through this up bead here. So the one that's right across. And I'm going to go through just like that. Okay, and now I'm going to take my string and I'm going to go through this bead here. So kind of squeeze this here, go through here. I'm going to go through the bead facing up towards it, just like that. And I'm going to pull, and then I'm going to go through this up bead here. And then, just like before, I'm going to go ahead and meet this tail up with this loop and give it a tie. And then your little guy has both of his arms now. I'm so sorry if that was hard to follow. Once again, I'm trying. Okay, got about 3 or 4 ties, and I'm going to go ahead and cut off this. And now, He's got his arms. Oh. Okay, so now all we have to do is we have to finish up the head. Apologies for any lighting changing. I have to stop to let my camera charge up because this video is very long, but we're almost done. All right, so now we're gonna go ahead and work on the head of our clown. We're gonna add 16 beads to one side of our string. With 14 beads added on, with 16 beads added on, I'm gonna go ahead and tie this off. And we don't need any slack on this one because we already saved the string on the side for us. So we're just gonna tie this off, just how we have normally been doing it, off this tiny tail here. And we're gonna go ahead and get started. So to start, I'm going to start with a pink for the blushy cheeks. You don't have to do this if you don't want to. So if you don't want blushies, you'll just skip this step. And I'm going to just weave it in as we have been in the past. And then we're gonna go ahead and do a nose. So I'm gonna add on my red bead and weave it through here. Again, your nose can be any color, doesn't matter. Same thing for your blushies. We're gonna add on our last blushie and weave it over. And that should be the pattern so far. And for the rest of this, we're just gonna go ahead and do white. And I hope at this point, everyone is an absolute master at the peyote stitch. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead, weave it through this white and up through the blushy. Now, I'm going to fill in the two spots with white, so in between the blushy and in between the red of the nose. Now, coming up is another optional step. If you like the look of these like puppy dog looking eyes versus just the regular eyes, at this part, you are going to add your eye color. For me, I don't like the look all too much. I like the plain single eye, so I'm gonna skip this step. But if you want that puppy dog looking eye, you're gonna go ahead and add your color here. So whatever color you're using for the eyes, but for me, I'm just gonna skip that step. And we are going to fill the rest up with white. And for right here, before we step up to the pink, if you are doing that sad puppy dog eye look, this is where you're gonna add your second eye color too. But once again, for me, I am skipping this. So I'm gonna go up my blushy and up the white, and I'm gonna pull. And I'm gonna go ahead and add on a white. And then I'm gonna add on, right above the blushy, my first eye color. And I'm just keeping it simple, just gonna keep it black. And I'm gonna fill in the rest of these spots with white. And right before I step up, I'm going to add on my final eye color, stepping up to these two whites, just like before. Okay, and for the rest of this pattern, we are gonna add 2 more rows of white, and then we will be done with the face, and then we'll just need to add on his hat. Okay, stepping up my row through these 2 white beads here. And adding 1 more row of white going all the way around. All right, coming up to our last, we're gonna go ahead and weave up those 2 whites just like we were doing before. And now we need to add on his little hat. So for what I'm doing, I'm just gonna start with blue. I'm gonna add 3 beads of any color. And I'm going to not weave into this point. I'm gonna jump over to the next point. And with my 3 beads on, I'm gonna pull. And I'm gonna continue this pattern going all the way around. So skipping this middle bead here, jumping over to the next one. Adding on my 3 beads, skipping this bead, weaving it to the one over here, adding on my last 3 blue beads, skipping this bead here, weaving it through here, but I'm also going to weave it up through these 2 blue points here. And pull. And we're going to continue this pattern again. So something similar. So I'm going to go ahead and add on my 3 beads. And I'm going to weave it in to the blue bead right here. So we are not skipping, but we are just weaving in. And I'm going to add on my 3 green beads. And I'm going to weave into the blue point here. Adding on my 3 green beads, weaving it into this blue point here. Adding on the last 3 green beads and weaving it up through this bead here. And we're also going to weave it in up through these 2 green beads. Okay, we're almost done with this hat. And now we just need to close it off. So I'm gonna take 4 beads of any color. I'm gonna go back to my hot pink. I'm gonna add 1 bead on, and I'm gonna weave it through the point of the green, so the middle. I'm gonna add on my pink, and weave it through the point of the green hat here, pull. Adding on my pink bead, weaving it through the top of the hat here, and doing this one more time, weaving it through the point. And I'm gonna pull, and that will pull his hat all together. Now I'm going to tie this off just like how we have been. So taking my string, looping it under through that loop of fabric there, and pulling. Now for one of my little dudes, I actually sewed in a tiny little pom-pom. So if you're wondering how that got there, I literally just sewed it on. So if you also want to add on a pom-pom, please do. They're very cute. So I'm going to go ahead and cut off this. We're so close. All right, the sun has gone down, so I apologize about all the lighting changes. You know, this is taking a while. Okay, so we are going to attach our clown's head now. So we need to line it up. So his nose should be lined up just like this. So it should fit together like a puzzle piece. And it should be lined up like that. Now, this part can be a little bit difficult, so I need you to stick with me here. I'm gonna go ahead and, for the ease of this tutorial, I'm gonna take my string and I'm just gonna weave it all the way towards the back, just so that way we're all in the same place, so we can all do this at the same time together. This is not necessary. If you're confident in attaching the head, you don't even need to do this. I'm just doing this so that way we can all be together at the same place. Right here. Right there. Okay. So everybody should be, I'm starting with the back of my clown, so whatever side is the back. We are going to be right here, right next to this pink bead here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make sure that my clown's head is aligned, front and back. So again, should fit all together like one big puzzle piece. And I'm going to take my string and I am going to weave it through the up beads. So I'm going to take my string, and this bead is an up bead, this bead is a down bead. I'm going to weave it through that up bead. If I can get it. Okay. And now I'm going to take my string and I'm going to weave it back down through this green sticking up. So this up bead here. Just like that. Now I'm going to take my string and I'm going to weave it up into the next up bead. So this one here. And then I'm going to take my string and I'm going to weave it through the next up bead, so that green right next to it. Okay, so for this part, I'm going to take my string and I am actually going to weave it down and then up. So I'm going to kind of squeeze this a bit. I'm going to weave it down and then up, just like that. I am going to weave it in to this up bead here. So we're skipping this, so it's going to kind of leave a gap. There's nothing we can really do about that. When we pull this all together, this will pull everything together, but I'm going to go ahead and weave it through this one here. And I'm going to pull. And then I'm going to weave it through this green one right here and pull. This part's really difficult. I really don't like doing this part because I get very nervous and I hate explaining it because I feel like I'm not doing a great job of it. Great. Alrighty, so now I'm gonna have to skip these beads again. I'm gonna weave down just like we did before and up, down and up. So as you can see, we're leaving these pieces right here gapped. Now I'm going to take my string and I'm going to weave it into the next up bead, which is going to be this white one right underneath that blushy. And now I'm going to weave down diagonally into that next up bead, that green bead. And I'm going to weave up to the next up bead, so the one right underneath the nose. Okay. And I'm going to weave down into this blue bead here. And we're going to go up through this white bead here. Now, at this point, if you want your clown to be a shaker, you can just take a handful of pony beads. It doesn't matter. I'm just using some of mine from my bead graveyard here. These are just my extra colors that I have nothing to do with them. And I'm going to go ahead and dump them in here. This is your time to do it now. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to take my string and I am going to weave it here into this next up bead, that blue one. Okay. Now we're going to have to do that funky little string trick again. So I need to weave down and up. So these beads here. Down and then up. All right. And now I'm going to weave up to the next up bead on the white head. Just like that. And then I'm going to take my string, I'm going to weave it into the next up bead, which is that blue one right there. So this can get kind of tricky. Okay. All right, and I'm going to do that fun bead trick again, going down and up. So going down and up. So going across here and going up. And finally going through that last up bead here, that last white one. And now you're gonna pull it all together. And that, my friends, will pull your clown's head all together, just like that. It's a bit interesting, huh? Now, we're gonna go ahead and tie this off, just like how we've been doing. This is gonna be really, really, really tricky, so you need to be patient. So, I'm gonna kind of squeeze my beads here. It's very tricky. Ugh. Just like that. There we go. So, weaving it under and pulling. Ugh. Ugh. Okay, I got it. Okay, I got my 3 ties on it. Thank goodness. All right, now, if you have leftover string, don't even bother cutting it off. If you need extra string, either you will tie it on to your tail to extend it, or you're gonna tie a new piece of string into here. For me, I have extra string, so I'm just gonna leave it as is. We are going to add the collar here. You can do whatever you'd like for the collar. I'm just going to do kind of what I did here. It's like the alternating like pink and yellow. So actually, I'm gonna do all hot pink. I think that'll be really cute. Okay, so I'm going to make sure that my string is sticking out of a top bead here. So one of these ones here. Doesn't matter which one, just needs to be one of these guys here. Okay, and I'm gonna go ahead and add on 3 spikes for my collar. And I'm going to weave it in to the next top bead here. So I'm gonna squeeze my guy's head just so I can get it through there. And I'm gonna pull. And I'm gonna pull tight to make sure that it holds its pointy shape. I'm gonna add 3 more beads of any color on, and I'm gonna weave it in to the next white top bead here. And I'm gonna squeeze his head right through. And we're gonna pull. I'm gonna add 3 more beads on, and I'm gonna weave it in to the next top bead here. And pull. And we're going to continue this pattern all the way around, and you don't even have to do this step if you don't want to. I just think it's really cute, and I think it kind of helps hide these gaps from the head. I'm doing surgery on him. You're almost there, buddy. Picked out these colors because I thought it'd be fun because they are kind of UV reactant. So I thought those would be fun to give to somebody who might be going to escape. Thought that this would be very fitting. All right, coming up here, I'm gonna go ahead and weave into this bead here. It's gonna be a pain in the butt, but I can do it. There we go. All right, his collar is done. And you know what that means? We gotta tie it off. So I'm gonna go ahead and tie this off, and we're done with this dang thing. This took me so long to do, especially with the tutorial. These things already take forever to make. A tutorial on top of that really eats away at your time. You know, it'd be really cute if you added pom-poms to the tops here. I might do that. Who knows? All right, my friends, our guy is done. We have made our very own shaker candy clowns. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. This is kind of my first more advanced tutorial that I've done on this channel. So I hope that you guys enjoyed it and that it was hopefully a little bit easy to follow. I know that these things can be really difficult. I know this was my very first attempt and it took me 2 days to do it. These things can take a while, so if you made it here, yay, congratulations, you did it. Alrighty, my friends, if you have any questions, comments, or feedback, please leave them in the comment section below. Feedback really helps the channel grow. This video, just like many of others, was a suggestion from viewers like you. So if you have any suggestions, leave them in the comments, and who knows, maybe you might be the next tutorial. I'm gonna go ahead and put my email up here. People sometimes send me creations, some of the things that they do and they make using my tutorials. I would love to see some of the candy clowns that you guys make so I can add them at the end of my videos at the end card. Okay, my friends, thank you so much for watching and I'll see you in the next tutorial. Bye-bye!